Today on Ibogaine Uncovered, we're honored to be joined by Yan Katz, a seasoned clinical counselor whose own journey through high-pressure careers and psychedelic healing led him to Beond's front line as a preparation and integration coach. After 2 decades in finance and the music industry left him feeling disconnected and burnt out, Yan underwent transformational Ibogaine-assisted work as well as work with other psychedelics that reshaped his sense of purpose. Holding a master's degree in clinical counseling, he now fuses trauma-informed somatic and psychodynamic methods to support individuals in psychedelic recovery and transformation. At Beond, Yan guides clients, including veterans, executives, athletes, and everyday people, through the deep work of preparation, integration, and life realignment after treatment. In this episode, we explore his personal evolution and the core principles that guide his work, including presence, embodiment, and the long arc of healing. Yan, welcome to Ibogaine Uncovered. It's really good to have you here.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
So many people come to psychedelic work not just through curiosity, but through rupture, transformation, or a call to meaning. You describe yourself as a masculine alchemist. Can you take us back? What were the formative experiences in your early life or career that eventually opened you up to the healing power of psychedelics?
Yeah, that's it's a big question. I think that there was a lot of feelings that maybe I had when I was younger that I felt weren't necessarily welcome. Um and and this comes in with masculinity, I think, as well, where men aren't allowed to be sad. So we protect with anger. Women aren't allowed to be angry or they're crazy. And so we we kind of gravitate towards these societal standards. And I think generally I'm a very, I don't know about very, but a fairly emotional individual. I feel a lot. And so I remember when I was much younger, I would feel vulnerability. And then eventually I had to close that up. And that closed up with anger. Um, and I was always very curious about psychedelics. My first psychedelic experience was when a friend asked me if I wanted to try LSD, and I was in Washington, D.C. And the moment that it kicked in, I was sitting in front of the White House, and I wasn't going to school at the time because I was convinced that I was going to be a young millionaire, and so I was always on this kind of perpetual grind. But um, I walked around and went from memorial to memorial in the middle of the night with this friend and had this realization that all of these people that I see in these memorials and some of the artists, so like later we looked at some Van Goghs and I realized all of these what we call greats are just trying to figure out life. They're trying to figure out life in their own language. Einstein through numbers, Jefferson through words, Van Gogh through art. And so I realized I had to go back to school. I had to go back and learn. Um, and then I decided to go back to school. And actually, at that very beginning stage, I had made my major psychology, and then this voice came in again. Oh, you have to make money, and I went back to finance. Um, and so that was kind of the beginning of the journey. I continued with curiosity for about almost 2 decades at that point. And at this point, well over 2 decades, but a bit over 2 decades. So yeah, so that's kind of how it started.
So there's, in our culture, there's this high performance, high stress sort of lifestyle and pressure. And it sounds like you were headed towards that or
Yeah.
and we see a lot of people at Beyond who are very successful, they're high achievers, but they're burnt out. So you spent 2 decades in high pressure industries before feeling very disconnected. Can you share more about that experience and then what finally became the catalyst for change?
Yeah. I was born in Moscow. in the former Soviet Union. My parents told me from a young age, we brought you here when you were 3. This is the land of opportunity, so make us proud. And no pressure. And so I constantly was looking for some way to do it. And so at 17, I joined a multi-level market to work my way into being a millionaire. At 13, I was selling newspapers door to door. I was in mortgages by 18, advising doctors and lawyers how to spend their money. Um, and
There was a
it,
lot of pressure from your parents to find and you were looking for this sort of American dream.
it was a very materialistic type of pressure.
Yeah.
It was buy a house, buy a car, make these things happen. And so, to no fault of their own, I mean, these are their dreams, right? This is what they've always dreamed of in the Soviet Union, where you weren't allowed to make money. And so, and so, I worked in finance for a long time. Went back to school. When I was in school, I was the founding president of a fraternity in college. I simultaneously ran a business. Afterwards, I went back into finance, and I mean, some of the jobs that I had worked were 120-hour weeks. We spent the night at work. It was the craziest Shark Tank I've ever imagined. Like, there could be a movie about this stuff where the guy next to you is just looking over your shoulder and taking your deals, and that's just what the culture was. It was like this extremely high-paced, very, very aggressive culture. And so it got wild, and there was this excitement from it. I had a lot of really fun energy where it was a game, and it burned me to the core. Like, to the core of me, I felt like a slave to money, like a slave of time, giving up everything. Um, and eventually I went into the music industry, and I was a tour manager and personal manager of fairly well-known individual. And it was it was also so beautiful. People would come up to me and say, wow, like, you're living the dream. And sometimes I would say, sure. And sometimes I would say, well, it looks nice on Instagram, because I was the sober guy who had $100,000 in his pocket, counting the money, making sure the security was okay, driving, um, planning absolutely every aspect of every award show, of every stylist, of every single thing that happened. And so,
You have to be extremely grounded, clear, and keep this person in check all the time,
yeah,
and that can be tedious.
very tedious. But there was this moment where I remember looking at the person who was at the very front of the concert, and him looking down at her. And there's this moment where he he's rapping to her, and I was just with him on the bus before. I know a very intimate aspect of his life, and she is idolizing him, spent hundreds of dollars to be here, and is in the peak experience of her life. Like, this is the person that pushed all the way to the very front and was right there.
Sure, she's finally meeting her idol.
She's meeting her idol, wishing she was him. And I know what his life is like, and her life in that moment, I believe to be far more fulfilling. In that moment, it's such an interesting juxtaposition, because there isn't necessarily fulfillment in getting to that place. There's actually a lot of sacrifice. There's less connection, and we're humans. We're made for connection. Like, without connection, we wither. And so, yeah. So I found myself really striving for meaningful, deep connection throughout my life, throughout my journey, but constantly having this voice in my head that I have to perform to exist. I have to earn my existence.
Right, you have to achieve, and then, of course, juxtaposed to this deeper desire you had to be a psychologist,
Uh,
which you later became.
A psychotherapist. Yeah,
Psychotherapist.
yeah. I'm a clinical counselor. I'm an associate clinical counselor now, and so I basically did go back to school and do all the things in order to become that. And so yeah, it's a lifelong achievement. It's something that, I'll continue kind of morphing into whoever I am. But yeah.
So yeah, very interested in how you found psychedelics as a healing tool. You shared a little bit about your LSD experience in Washington,
Hmm.
but maybe you can share a little bit about Ibogaine since it's not a subtle medicine. It's known for very radical clarity. It helps people experience a deep personal reckoning, and it's certainly a paradigm shift. What was your first experience with Ibogaine like, and how did it begin to shift your worldview or sense of self?
Yeah, so Ibogaine was it was very interesting. My first experience with Ibogaine was this last November. I had read reports about Ibogaine for the last 15 years and um, really told myself all the time that when it would come to me is when I would accept a call. Um, and so it wasn't something that I was necessarily always seeking. I just knew that if I go in the right direction in life in general, that the things that are meant for me will be there. And that was the realization that I had recently that I'll speak to. But um, I decided at some point to move to San Diego because I felt that there was this community, just presence compared to where I lived in Los Angeles. And I was already studying to become a psychotherapist, and I met the love of my life. I had just gotten married. Just all of these things that I had always wanted, and I kept going towards this call. I had started building this community and working with this already in place community in San Diego, meeting friends that I met in very vulnerable spaces. And one of my friends approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to, would you be interested in working at Beyond? I think that you'd be great there." And I had been saying probably for the year before that like Ibogaine is the next frontier for me. It's just something that felt very real. I don't know when, but I feel like it's this deep curiosity of this medicine. And so it was this just in November 2024 that I did Ibogaine here at Beyond, and it was yeah, it was a spectacular experience. It was so beautiful. It was so amazing. Um, and it was also, it really like cracked my heart open in a way that I think I really wanted, like I really longed for a long time. It brought me back to this authentic version of myself that was able to take in energies and feelings. And with that openness, I was able to go in these certain places into some things that were a little scary, um, some memories and some feelings that just kind of opened. And it felt like it was a really long time that passed, but maybe within a few minutes, it just went to the next one and to the next one. And we hear about this all the time, but it was just this very clear, crystal clear 4K vision of this beautiful memory, reminding me that I had some really epic times in my life too when I was really little. You know, some of the difficult times stood out generally. But in this case, it was very clear that I had a great life. I had a great life with depth, with so many different things. And on a physiological level, what was interesting is, I personally, um, so I struggled with cigarettes for a long time. I struggled with cannabis for a long time. I started smoking when I was 14 years old. And I would smoke cannabis and it would help me calm down in a way, or I believed so. And then I would realize that, months or years would go by and certain things that I thought were important that I wasn't going towards were fading out of my life. And And so I would stop smoking cannabis, and within a couple days, cigarettes would just come in. I'd just start smoking nicotine, just
You switched, you
go
transferred.
back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It was really hard for me.
Mm.
My uncle died of cigarettes. Well, he died of cancer, but um, his two first cousins, also died right around the same age, 65, cancer. They all three of them smoked. And so every time that happened, I quit smoking and quit for a year, 2 years. And every time was just this pool. I'd maybe smoke a cigarette here and there and then put it out and stop. Um, it was really wild. After Ibogaine, it just was gone. Like I'm just not drawn to it. And it was profound because even like my wife will say, it feels different. It feels like there isn't this pull, like there isn't this kind of like white knuckling it. So yeah, so on a physiological level, that was really beautiful. And also, what's interesting is I've never really had a problem with alcohol. Maybe when I was in high school or something, I drank too much, but that kind of faded out of my life too. I go to a gala right after, maybe a month or two after leaving Beyond, and they pour me the wine, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I know what this is gonna feel like later. It's just I'd rather drink juice right now. So it's really interesting how that
So
happened.
not interested. I've
Not
heard that with a lot of clients too, with sugar, with caffeine. They didn't really even expect it, but just
Yeah.
the desire isn't there, and it's not taking up that headspace of thinking about it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like my mind is so optimized that the reason that I might need the alcohol is to pull myself away from a negative thought pattern,
Hmm.
and that negative thought pattern is, fixing itself within my mind already. I don't even need to have that at that moment, so, yeah.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it was very meaningful for you.
Yeah, very meaningful. It was profound.
You spoke a little bit about how you felt called or you were looking for the signs
Mhm,
prior to,
mhm.
experiencing the ibogaine. I'm very interested in this sort of pre-initiation stage, where people are preparing and subtle signs that a journey is going to begin months before. Um, what are some of those inner or outer shifts you notice in clients or for yourself, prior to working with Ibogaine?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Carl Jung that said that the divine speaks to us through synchronicities, not words. And and so I think that when we're on the right path, everything kind of aligns. Everything does align. It's constantly reminding us that we're doing the right thing. And then when we're not, it's pretty clear as well. And generally for me, I can speak for myself. I feel it in my body. And in the past, I used to not listen, and now I do. And so when when I was preparing, I mean, really going into Ibogaine in general, I think, I mean, really all the synchronicities in general in regards to me moving to San Diego, me focusing on the community that I wanted. Before that, even me dialing into the relationship that I was seeking for a long time. Um, and then, at one point when when I had this big catalyst of change coming out of the corporate world that I was in, it, I looked to my wife at that point and I said, "Hey, like, what are some of the, what are some of the communities that you were telling me about before?" And so maybe I could speak to that a little bit. Essentially, what I had spoken about my uncle dying a little bit earlier. And so when my uncle passed away, it was in 2015, and it was really one of the most difficult things for me. Um, I came and saw him, and he kept telling me that he had this message for me. It was over the course of about a year and a half. He kept telling me, "I need to talk to you about something really important." And simultaneously, while he was getting chemo and radiation, they were also giving him intravenous dilaudid for, all of the pain. And so when I would come see him, he wouldn't he wouldn't be able to talk to me about those important things.
He wanted to, but
He kept saying, I need to talk to you, I need to talk to you, and he would kind of fall asleep. And this happened over a really long time. And so I just kept visiting him, and it was also really painful to witness how the medical system kind of just told him, hey, we're not doing any more transfusions. They didn't say where he's going. They just kind of said that. And that was difficult for me to witness as well. But when I came to him on his final day, I came the night before, and he had this look in his eyes like he still wanted to say that thing, but he couldn't even speak at this point. And I had an opportunity to get a ride home. And so I felt like it was reaching for comfort. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going now. And he looked at me, and with his eyes, he told me, don't go. And and I said, I'm going. I still went. And and that was so painful for me. I felt like I left him on his final moment. Um and it haunted me. It haunted me for a really long time. And I really struggled. And so I got to the point in 2021. I was working in mortgages, and everything was going really well. I was running an office, a lot of people in the office, and it was a really, really successful venture, the most successful point in my life at that point. And everything just the more I made, the more I kept telling myself find this ceiling. I'm gonna hit this ceiling, and then I'm gonna be able to do what I really want to. The further that ceiling kept going, and I kept spending more on marketing so I could make even more and more and more. And I kept doing this, and I found myself just in this terribly toxic state of mind. And finally, there was just this kind of blow up at the end of 21 internally, where I decided to step away from all of it. And just pretty much overnight, I stepped away, and I decided to do my own journey with psilocybin. And I did a psilocybin journey, and I went in and I watched that moment, that final moment with my uncle. I witnessed it, and then I became him, and then I processed my own death. And I looked around, and I realized who is in the room on my final moment, who is holding space for me, who's talking politics in the other room while I'm taking my last breath. Um, and I realized I have to create boundaries. I have to create boundaries around my friends and my family, around the people who are closest to me. I have to create boundaries around my time, what I do with my life. I don't have enough time left. I'm going to die, just like everyone. We're all going to die. And so I can't mess around with things that don't matter anymore. I can't mess around with people that aren't willing to meet me at this level anymore. I don't have time for that. And so that's when I came to my wife, and she would always say, hey, you ever thought about men's work? You ever thought about men's work? Hey, you ever thought about men's work? And so I was like, all right, tell me about men's work. Can you connect me with a few people? And so I reached out to a couple of people that I now consider mentors. And I joined a couple of organizations, and simultaneously went through this 4.5 month program with one individual, and then got involved with another organization, um, and went through a whole process, and decided over the course of the next 4 to 5 months that I was going to. And I also, it was simultaneously, some of the legalities started changing around psychedelic medicine. And so I've always been extremely curious and extremely passionate about psychedelics. And it was always something that was kind of scoffed at around very professional groups in my circles. And so I never imagined the possibility of working in this space, never even imagined it. And so at that point, I realized there is a way. I can do it.
This is now taken seriously.
This is now taken seriously, and the laws are changing, and the way is being paved. And the way that I saw was through becoming a psychotherapist. And so I decided to go back to school after those 4 months of mentorship. Um, Went into a program, got my master's, and yeah, it was learned everything that I needed to learn, and still I'm acquiring my hours for licensure, and am seeing clients as a psychotherapist. But then this opportunity came along in order to be able to incorporate all of the skills that I learned as a psychotherapist, but also in men's work facilitation, because there we are able sometimes to go to the depths with brotherhood as the medicine in that case. And I think one of the real important factors is that once somebody decides that they're going to do this work, the universe conspires in their favor. Everything starts to go and all of the signs start to show up. And so once I started talking about my purpose, this is a full circle into what your question was. Once I started talking about my purpose, I'm going to be a psychotherapist. All of a sudden people are like, oh, cool, you should meet this person. I'm going to be a psychedelic psychotherapist. Really? You need to meet this guy. This guy's amazing. Great. So I reached out to that guy and we talked for a little bit. And then when I went to a retreat with that men's work organization, I start talking to some random person. And he's like, I think you're in my phone already. I think we already talked. And we look at our phones and we stored each other just as like almost the exact same description of each other. And then I'm like, hey, by the way, I might be moving to San Diego. Where do you live? He's like, I live in San Diego. Cool. I'm at my residency. I text him, "Hey, come over. Hey, can I come by and, say hi?" He's like, "Sure. I'm actually having a community dinner today. Come to my house." I come to his house and we get there and everybody's like, "Wow, you're moving to San Diego. Great. We might have an apartment here. You need to contact this person." All of a sudden, the whole community is ready to be there for us. One of the people that was there that night invites me to work at Beond. I mean, like all of these things are constantly saying yes, and I say yes as they align for me. And so I think it touches a lot on some of the things that I talk about with my clients here to be as authentic as you can be, because the things that are for you will then show up and the things that aren't for you will disappear. If you're wearing the mask and you're not being yourself, people fall in love with the mask and you have a bunch of people around you who aren't for you. So when you slightly take the mask off, it feels so terrible because they might not like you. Well, if you show yourself all the time, people who don't like you go away. The things that aren't for
Attract
you,
the
they'll
people that love you, you attract the work you should be doing in this world, and you live from an authentic, beautiful place. And you're happy, you're fulfilled.
yeah,
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that.
exactly.
Really beautiful. So, one question a lot of people have, I guess there's this classic idea that the medicine opens the door, but you have to walk through it around set and setting. And all these studies show that people who go through real preparation and integration have much better results. It
Mhm.
has a better chance of healing depression, anxiety. For those considering Ibogaine, what does it mean to have, psychedelic preparation coaching? What are the core objectives or exercises that help someone get ready for the Ibogaine experience?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question, and I love that metaphor, and I even say it in a way of like, we have slowly stacked this fortress around our heart brick by brick every day, every moment of pain, and eventually we lose the door. We can't find it anymore. And so the medicine will show us the door, but it's up to us to walk through it. And then the integration part is going out into the forest, right? Going out back into the community without the fortress, without the protection. And so sometimes it's even scarier. It's even scarier after the Ibogaine because now the stuff is real and it's right in front of us. And so the preparation work, um, I think first of all goes into understanding the self, understanding how some of these tools have served me, and some of these things that I'm now trying to get rid of were there for me in the first place. you know, maybe this chemical, whether it's alcohol or heroin or anything, maybe it saved me in a way because maybe the pain would have killed me. And so I know that these chemicals are no longer serving me. And so I need to know how to work without them. And so that's, I think, like really the core of it, where knowing that I need to be able to get back to my authentic self without all of these things in front of me, without all of these things that I believed at one point were protecting me and very well were. Um, but who am I? Right? At what point, like to what level do I want to get to know myself? And how did I get here? And what versions of me did I abandon so that I could fit into my family unit or society or my community or to the vision that I was supposed to become from my parents, right? And so what is the point, right? Because I see the medicine as, we do a lot of coaching here. We do a lot of preparation for the medicine. And I think what's also important, potentially even more important, is using the medicine as the tool, right, to get to know the self. And so without, you could have the best tool in the world, but if you're not ready to start building that house, that hammer is worthless, right? If it's just laying there, it could be fantastic, but it's worthless. And so how can we use Ibogaine to reach the most authentic, deepest version that I want to be? Um, and then integration is then putting that in effect. And so an analogy that I really like is it's like going into a gold mine. And we go into a gold mine and we could just go to the gold mine and we could just pick some of the gold that we find and stuff our pockets and get home and hey, look, I found some gold. I went to this really cool gold mine. Or I can get all my picks and shovels, and get my hard hat with a little flashlight and a wheelbarrow, my sifter, and just really be prepared. And the more prepared I am for this experience, the more gold I'm going to get. But then I could still come home and dump that gold into the garage, and people come over and I show them, look, that's what I did. Or I could take that gold and use it every day, turn it into a spoon that I use every day, turn it into jewelry, turn it into something that I trade with. And so that's the integration piece. And so, how am I going to be able to change my life and go into the direction that I really want to go in? I don't have to go at full speed. We're always told to go at full speed. I just need to be going in the right direction.
I just need to be aware.
Yeah.
I don't have to go fast
I don't have to go fast.
and know which way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understood. Very helpful. Thanks for explaining that. So let's talk a little bit about somatic therapy. It's recognized as a key for healing trauma. You work a lot with it. You've said to people, it's about finding the inner healer within. I think a lot of the work we do at Beond, there is no guru. We try and help people find their own inner healer. How do you guide clients to reconnect with their somatic intelligence and body-based wisdom in the preparatory phase or in the integration phase?
Sure. Yeah. I like to incorporate somatic experiencing, and really just somatic modalities in general that help the individual understand how emotions manifest in the body. And so in the body, a lot of times what'll happen is somebody will say, "Oh yeah, well I'm feeling really anxious." I say, "Okay, so how do you feel that?" And I say, "Well, I'm thinking about my mom and then she told me this and
You're like,
and
that's
so
all in the mind, in the intellect. Where do you feel it in your
yeah,
body?
exactly. Is that really feeling? What do you mean feel? Like if I hit my leg, I feel that, right? But how do you feel anxiety?" And so eventually, especially with anxiety, a lot of times they're in their head and they'll continue to answer that way. But once we get to the fact that it's a feeling and we could really be with it and we could sit with that feeling. What's interesting is the feeling manifests in the body, and it manifests very clearly, and it's in a particular part of the body. And once you get to know it and make space for it and be okay with a certain level of discomfort, you don't have to fix it, right? We're always reaching for something. I feel something, so I need to get rid of it. In fact, we don't even think I feel something. We just reach for it,
I want to
right?
change this. I want to feel better.
Like, it might not be I feel anxious, so I need a drink. It might be like it's time for a drink, right? Like, they don't even get to the
You
I
go
feel
directly
anxious.
to the solution.
Exactly.
Is
Solution is time for drink. Oh, time for drink, time for drink, time for drink. Versus, and maybe the next step is, okay, I'm feeling a little anxiety. Now I need a drink. And maybe eventually the solution is, I'm feeling anxiety, the end. Maybe eventually it's, I'm feeling anxiety in my chest and it feels like tightness and it's okay. And I'm going to sit with it. And this tightness is a certain color and a certain shape. And when I sit with it, it starts to dissipate a little bit.
No, it's about bringing an element of curiosity and really being with.
Being with it, letting it, right? Like, what's okay? Well, why do we have to fix this feeling right now? What's wrong with feeling anxious for this moment? And then we can even go into, when did you start feeling this? Because that feeling is a memory. That feeling is a memory. We might have trouble recalling certain memories of our early childhood, but we remember through feeling. And so that feeling is a memory from when we were really little. And usually the story comes up through that. So then we go into the story of what happened and how that feeling has persisted, because they don't know that they're putting themselves back into the same situation over and over, because they're trying to get rid of the feeling that they had when they were just very little, but they're filtering their lives over and over through this way. And so then eventually they could get to the point that, oh, I can be with this feeling. And that is my version of letting it speak to me. Maybe it's telling me, I don't like how you're living, right? My feeling was sadness and depression. And I didn't know that, right? I didn't realize, a lot of people who knew me would be like, What do you mean? Like, I've never imagined you as depressive at all." But in certain aspects of being alone, I realized, actually, there's this deep grief. And the grief was that I wanted to live life differently, but I felt like I was trapped in the life that I was living.
And the way your family ascribed to you about needing to succeed, and so you're maybe moving faster than your body can handle. Not feeling the sadness is a slower pace
Right.
versus, intensity or anger or, you know,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
actually pause and to feel it.
In this version of the self that's speaking to me, that's telling me, hey, actually, there's a different vision for you. You don't have to have disconnected selling money for money. You don't have to do that for the rest of your life. You could do anything and you're going to be successful if you love it, right? The connection is the key. And so listening to that little voice, realizing that it's a part of me speaking to me, was really important. Yeah.
Amazing. Can you share a little bit about various modalities you work with, like psychodynamic, trauma-informed
Sure.
aspects? How do you weave these approaches into your coaching during preparation and integration?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the things that I've learned in general can be weaved in. Now, what I do in coaching is very different from what I do in therapy. But every aspect of my life is informing a different aspect. And so, um, some of the things that I've learned through men's work has really informed aspects of um, finding the somatic part in the body and understanding where it came from in order to be able to speak to it and understand what it's saying to us, and then constructing what life might look like from there. And so that's kind of like a somatic psychodynamic. But if I'm doing, if I'm working with a therapy client, it's going to look so differently. I'm gonna really hold the space and stay with it, and probably stay in more of a psychodynamic approach where I'm really holding the frame, not really speaking to my own experience. Um, in coaching, it's very different. It's an opportunity to be able to help the person exactly where they are right now. So we meet them for a very specific thing, and we have this incredible tool, Ibogaine, to be able to help them. And that's really one of the most beautiful things about this is the fact that a lot of times the people who come here are, well, actually almost every time, um, are in the most transformational part of their life. It's incredible.
So there's a lot of opportunity, even though to them they might be, under a lot of pressure.
They I mean, diamonds are made out of pressure, right? Otherwise, they're a lump of coal. It's like it's it feels like so much pressure, and it feels so overwhelming and maybe scary, but I see just brilliance. People being able to make things happen so brilliantly, so incredibly. It's so inspirational. It's really inspirational work.
How do you help clients turn their ibogaine experience into sustainable, lasting transformation? I mean, people have such profound insights and visions, but how do you actually help them so that these transformations stick?
Mhm. Yeah, I think asking certain questions to understand what these transformations mean, um, and then helping them create a plan to implement that into their life. You know, we plan and God laughs. I think that a lot of times people will go into this experience thinking, I'm going to only change certain aspects of my life that I really have. And then, this other thing that I know I really need to change, but it needs to go through this type of hole and it can't just get blown up. And, and then they come back from Ibogaine and they're like, yeah, I have to make profound change, and it doesn't have to look a certain way, and it already feels impactful, and I have to stay with this feeling. And so it is leading with that feeling and knowing that that feeling can be the catalyst for change. And so implementation will then be, what patterns are you doing? Are you connecting with people that are important to you? Are you building the community around you that's going to support the vision that you see? Are you leading a life of purpose? How do you connect with yourself? What is the aspect of ritual and connecting with the divine, and whatever your perspective is on that, right? Like, outside of religious context, even for somebody who's completely atheistic, com- connecting to the curiosity of the wonder of the fact that we are this having this conscious discussion about something with cells and atoms that are moving in a way that nobody really truly understands. So,
So yeah, Ibogaine's known to surface unprocessed traumas. In a lot of your writing online, you reflect on the raw truths of trauma healing after Ibogaine. What's one difficult truth clients often encounter afterwards, and how do you support them in not running away from it?
um, I think a lot of times people realize that their life may not have been exactly what they thought it was. Um, and it's sad and it's scary. Um, that some of the truths are that their parents might have been imperfect people, having a certain set of tools and doing the best that they could with that set of tools. But it inevitably led to certain levels of trauma in their life, um, and that they are imperfect, that they will make mistakes, and and that life is hard, right? Life can be hard. Um, Survival in general is hard, and we are, you know, in a very privileged position, and it's still very difficult, right? And even the juxtaposition between a client who might be very privileged versus a client who's not, who grew up in a very poor area, in a really difficult family situation, and knowing that that juxtaposition doesn't give one client the right to trauma over the other, right? Because the pain that the privileged individual might feel, he might feel like he doesn't deserve to feel pain. He's not allowed to be real. He's not allowed to be human. He's supposed to be perfect, right? In reality, we all live a human experience. And so I think that, yeah, yeah, I think those are some of the difficulties that people experience.
Let's talk about the work you do with men specifically. There's a growing conversation about how men carry trauma differently. You mentioned for yourself, anger. There's, I think, in general, maybe more avoidance than women
Mhm.
experience. What kind of masculine wounds or protective layers do you see softening most often through psychedelic work, especially with Ibogaine?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think we're in a really beautiful transformation over the last 60 years through feminist movement and empowering women in a really incredible way. And I think some of the unintended consequences have also made some men feel like they weren't allowed to feel pain, like there wasn't room for their pain. And really, even like before that, right? A couple hundred years ago, boys would go with dad off to work to become men. And then one of
Providers.
providers and at 13, if
Clippers.
your dad was a silversmith, you became a silversmith. You hung out with him all day. Um, During the Industrial Revolution, that changed, right? And so men went off to the factory, and the boy became a man through the lens of whoever was around. In that case, the teachers, the moms, the nurses, and there could be some level of difficulty or resentment, unintended, um, that shaped him in a way that he might have internalized that he wasn't allowed to feel sadness. He had to provide, but also be strong. He had to go to war. He had to do a lot of these very difficult things like police officers, firefighters, veterans. And but there wasn't room for compassion. And so there's this idea of a lone wolf, right? This lone wolf is now not allowed to have circles within the men's community. Which in the old days, you had the uncles and the grandfathers and everybody getting together in the village. But nowadays that's not a thing. And so now we see men with 4 times higher rates of suicide, much, much higher rates of addiction. Um, Okay, I don't know the exact number, but much higher rates of homelessness, um, deaths in war, all of these different factors. There's so much pain and struggling that then they come home and they're seen as weak if they complain about it to their spouses, and especially if they complain about it with other men. And so, in some of the work that I've done in various different men's work organizations, I've been able to witness men come together compassionately, vulnerably, authentically, and hold space for each other. Um, and it's really shaped who I am. It's really shaped my community. It's really shaped my friend circle. And it's shaped a lot of the people who aren't doing the work either because it kind of rippled into them. And so I believe that with a medicine like Ibogaine, it's it's like it's a cheat code.
You mentioned your heart cracked open.
My heart cracked open. Exactly. There's so much work involved in getting some people, especially with the biggest fortresses around them, to open up. And so we could create these different activations that we do in some of the retreats that I do where just brotherhood is the medicine, right? But it's not just brotherhood, it's fantastic. But coupling it with something like this, I mean, that's my dream. That's absolutely the dream. Being able to couple some of the incredible work that we do with Ibogaine specifically is an absolute dream. And it's something that, with a lot of the men that I work with here at Beyond, um, I very much encourage. I encourage men to seek out communities. I've had conversations in the last 2 days with several men who told me um, some of the struggles that they had with their fathers. And my response was, your father doesn't have all the tools. You can't expect him to, you know.
Join a men's group.
That will join a men's group, create a men's group, find a circle, find a retreat, find other men who have dedicated their lives to this. Because one man could be strong, one man could be smart, one man could be wise. They don't all have to be the same person.
They don't have all the answers
They don't have
individually, but together
exactly.
there's a tapestry there. It seems like more and more men's groups are popping up. I keep hearing about more and more circles, so that's very interesting. Yeah, so a single breakthrough moment can have a ripple effect for years. Speaking of men that you work with here at Beyond, maybe you can share a breakthrough moment from a client without naming anyone who you've coached, something that reminded you why this work is so important.
Yeah. I mean, I recall, this happens with several different clients. In general, this realization, a lot of times there's a belief that trauma has to look a certain way. If I wasn't abused as a child, then I have no right to be in pain. Um, but sometimes expectation is just as traumatic. I'm expected to perform a certain way, or I'm expected to be nice a certain way, or I'm expected to do in order to be. And so there's this realization, especially when, a specific client that I'm thinking of, a realization that, well, my parents were the perfect parents. And so there's nothing, I don't know why I'm in this position. And my question was, well, then, was there a lot of pressure to be perfect too? Was it really hard to be normal? And he said, yeah, absolutely. That, like, and kind of the floodgates opened at that point where it was, I had to, I couldn't disappoint them because they were so great. Right. And then, that's so scary for a parent, right? Like I could be too good. And so I think that, some of these wild realizations are really interesting. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so you share about rituals a lot, not just during ceremonies, but for ongoing life. Can you walk us through one of your personal rituals you've developed post Ibogaine for clients and how this ritual supports continued growth and integration, lasting change?
Hmm. Yeah. I really like the idea of life as a ceremony. Every aspect of life can be a ceremony. And really, we have rituals in different aspects of our life and we don't slow down and experience them. Um, I just had a baby shower on Saturday. I told you recently.
Yeah,
And
congratulations, by the way.
thank you so much. We're expecting in a month and a half a little girl and we're just ecstatic.
Beautiful.
And and we and there was this pull to do like a very traditional baby shower. And after all the work that I've done, I don't want to maybe be invited to a luncheon of all the girls and just kind of show up for an hour and then leave. I want to celebrate too. I want to bring in this ritual of this baby coming in. I'm going into fatherhood. And so I asked the men around me to help me bring in ceremony, and they delivered, like, profoundly.
Tell us about that. How?
We had this beautiful ritual of we stood around in a circle, and I had all the most important men of my life. Um, there were 3 prompts. Give me a story, something about your own father. Give me a story about your own fatherhood as a father, or give Jan some wise words and about some, experience you might have had. And so every man went around, and as they went around, they poured a little elixir. We called it. I think it was grape juice. I don't know. And so some elixir in a cup in this beautiful chalice that one of my brothers made for me, or got for me, and slowly the 25 men in the circle all just really honored me in different moments that I showed up for them that I might have forgotten about. Just really, really beautiful moments and a lot of wise words. And my father and um, m- my cousin, who's the son of that uncle that I spoke about earlier, and old communities, new communities, people who've known me for. I have a friend there who know me for 36 years. My whole life. I'm 39, and other people who have met me within the last few months. Um, and it was just this honoring. And then when I drank from the cup, they all put hands on me and just kind of all wished me well and like wished me into this future. And so I think that marked it, right? That marked this thing that we did. And my wife had her own ritual. And so I think celebrating these moments is so important because a lot of times, I've been a baby showers, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I've been at baby showers where maybe the guys play bocce ball or the guys don't show up at all and maybe show up for 10 minutes at the very end. I think celebration, and so therefore celebration of each day individually is really important. I always recommend my clients, especially when preparing for Ibogaine, start meditating in the morning and journaling right after.
Mm.
And in the evening, meditate and journal. And sometimes I might start with a 10-minute meditation, but the goal is maybe to get 20 so that the words start really flowing out and it creates this finitude. This it's no longer infinite thoughts spinning around the mind forever, but now it's a very concise amount of thoughts that are written down. Do I have anything else on this topic? No? Oh, wait, there's this one other thing. Wait, that's it. You look at the paper and you say, okay, that's the whole thing. Okay, all of a sudden the anxiety starts to go away and I feel better. But the ritual really is making my day start and end with me. And that ritual might be 5 minutes. It might be 2 hours. I might need to fill my cup so much that it takes a long time. But if my cup isn't full, I have nothing to give. Right? I can If my cup's a quarter full and I give you half of that, that's not enough for
It's
you.
not enough. Yeah.
It's not enough. You need more. And so I always tell my clients, give from the saucer, right? You want your cup overflowing and give everything from the saucer. So put yourself first and last.
That's incredible. Yeah, these rituals help us reconnect to ourselves and remember and remind us of why we're here and feel love, just like you express from your brothers and family and friends.
And celebrate.
Celebrate,
Yeah.
bring in a new, you're bringing in a new life. So that's lovely. So yeah, I guess my last question is, many people lately feel called to ibogaine for various reasons, whether they're coming for trauma, for depression, for addiction. Some are coming more for burnout or personal growth in general. Some are afraid, or they don't feel ready. What would you say to someone on the fence about preparing for ibogaine treatment? What kind of mindset, preparation, or surrender do you encourage?
This is a question that I've asked to some of my clients. Um, especially like some of my veteran clients, if you speak to, if I might be seeing a veteran later today, what would you want to say to them? And what I've heard resoundingly, especially specifically for the ones who have just gone through Ibogaine, is you owe it to yourself. You deserve it. You've been through it so much. You owe it to yourself. Do this for you. I have had a extensive history of psychedelic experimentation personally. And so when I approached Ibogaine, I had this anticipation that it was going to be the scariest thing in the world. And I found so much love in it. I found so much beauty in it. It really reconnected me and slowed me down and helped me look around and be okay with exactly where things are. It helped me very clearly reevaluate the things that weren't serving me. Maybe not even reevaluate, like it just kind of like shook them off. Kind of like I said earlier with nicotine and cannabis and things like that and alcohol, they just kind of got shaken off. Um, and and so I also think that really feeling into why. I think if you find your why, the how will come. We can do this together. Like we can do this. If someone's making you come here, if someone's saying, you got to go to Beond or you got to go do Ibogaine or else this is it, and you don't really want to do it, I don't think there's anything in my tool belt that's going to be able to help you. But if you deeply desire change, if you deeply desire those things that you've been reaching for your whole life and haven't been able to quite manage, I think we have the how. Yeah.
Thanks for expressing that and explaining that. Such wisdom you have, and thanks for sharing your journey and path and how you help clients in general prepare. And I really appreciate having you on the show. Is there a way that people can find you or connect with you if they have questions or just want to follow you? And
Sure. Yeah. Yan _Katz. So that's YAN 3 underscores KATZ on Instagram. I think on TikTok it's the same. I just started TikTok.
perfect.
Yeah, that's the best way. And I also wanted to say we were talking about as we close out, we were talking about my baby girl on the way, and I just wanted to really honor like being able to witness you with your daughter and it in these last moments recently the other day and that psychedelic science, it's just been such an inspiration and just so exciting to witness such joy and such connection between you two. So it like really makes it very exciting and looking forward. It really does.
Thank you. No doubt you'll be a great father. I'm very excited for you. Can't wait to meet her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Me too.
Take care.